No crowd, no praise, no one watching, just you, the work. The silence. This is where real power is built. Not on stages, not in gyms full of people, not in moments designed for content. Here, in the empty room, in the early morning darkness, in the space where no one sees you. If you're still here, this video is for you. You have to train alone, not because people are bad, not because connection doesn't matter, but because your growth cannot depend on anyone else's presence. People slow you down, not intentionally, but they do. They bring their energy, their opinions, their need for conversation, their pace. And when you train with others, you adjust, you sync, you compromise, you wait for them, you match their rhythm, you explain your process. And all of that, every moment spent adjusting to someone else, is time you're not spending on yourself. Validation weakens discipline. It feels good, it helps in the beginning, but it becomes a dependency. You start needing someone to notice, someone to acknowledge, someone to confirm that you're doing it right. And when that validation isn't there, you hesitate, you doubt, you lose momentum. Because your discipline was never yours. It was theirs, built on their approval, sustained by their attention. And the moment they stop watching, you stop moving. Noise kills focus. Conversation, music, notifications, other people's presence. All of it pulls you out of the moment, out of the work, out of the internal space where transformation happens. You can't think clearly when you're constantly engaging. You can't hear your thoughts when the room is full of noise. You can't develop deep focus when you're surrounded by distraction. So you train alone, not because you hate people, but because you need silence to grow. Loneliness is not weakness. Let that settle, because the world taught you the opposite. It taught you that being alone means something is wrong, that isolation is failure, that you should always be connected, always surrounded, always social. But that's a lie, a comfortable lie that keeps you dependent. Isolation sharpens purpose. When you're alone, there's no performance, no audience, no need to explain or justify. Just you and your goals, you and your discipline, you and the work. And in that space, your purpose becomes clear, because there's nothing to distract you from it, nothing to dilute it, nothing to compromise it. Silence builds awareness. It forces you to confront yourself, your thoughts, your fears, your weaknesses. Most people avoid that. They fill every moment with noise because silence is uncomfortable. But you're not most people. You understand that discomfort is where growth lives. So you sit in the silence. You train in the silence, you build in the silence, and slowly, that silence becomes power. Because you've learned to be comfortable with yourself, to rely on yourself, to trust yourself. That's strength, not the kind people see, the kind you feel. Self-improvement happens in the shadows, away from eyes, away from opinions, away from validation. You make progress without announcement. You don't post every workout. You don't share every win. You don't broadcast every step. You just move, quietly, consistently, relentlessly. Growth without approval. You don't need someone to tell you you're improving. You feel it. You know it. You measure it internally. Your strength increases, your focus sharpens, your discipline deepens. And none of that requires external confirmation. It's real whether anyone sees it or not. Consistency without applause. Day after day. Week after week, month after month, no one cheering, no one encouraging, no one watching, just you showing up, doing the work, building the foundation. And that consistency, sustained in silence, creates something unbreakable. Because it's not dependent on mood, not dependent on support, not dependent on anything outside of you. It's just discipline, pure, Unshaken, yours. No motivation, only routine. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. It depends on feelings, on circumstances, on external factors. But routine is constant. It doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't wait for inspiration. It just is. You train when no one checks on you, when no accountability partner texts, when no training buddy shows up. You train anyway, because that's the routine. That's the standard. That's who you are now. Discipline without accountability partners. You don't need someone else to keep you honest. You keep yourself honest. You set the standard. You hold the standard. You don't negotiate with yourself, because accountability that depends on others is fragile. It breaks the moment they're not available. But accountability to yourself, that's permanent. That's reliable. That's real. Showing up on empty days. Days when you feel nothing. Days when motivation is gone. Days when every part of you wants to stay in bed. You show up anyway. Not because it feels good, because that's when it matters most. Anyone can train when motivated, when energized, when conditions are perfect, but you train when conditions are terrible. When energy is low, when motivation is absent. That's where strength is built. In the resistance, in the discomfort, in the moments you'd rather quit. And you don't quit, because you train alone. And when you're alone, there's no one to perform for, no one to impress, just the work, and a decision to finish it. Most people fail here, in the silence. In the isolation, in the space where no one is watching. They need attention. They need someone to see their effort. They need proof that they're doing something worthwhile. And when they don't get it, they stop. They lose interest. They move on. They need cheers, the encouragement, the validation, the external confirmation that they're on the right path. But that confirmation never comes. Not consistently. Not when you need it, so they quit. They tell themselves it wasn't working. They tell themselves they'll try something else. But the truth is, they just couldn't handle the silence. They need someone to believe in them. A coach, a partner, a friend, someone who says you can do this. And you don't need that. Not because you're better, but because you've trained yourself not to need it. You believe in yourself, not because someone told you to, but because you've proven it to yourself. Through repetition, through consistency, through showing up when no one else did. That proof, that evidence you've gathered in private, is stronger than any external belief. Mental strength develops in isolation, away from distraction, away from comfort, away from escape. You learn to control your thoughts, not suppress them, control them. You notice when your mind offers excuses, and you choose not to believe them. You notice when doubt creeps in, and you choose not to follow it. You notice when discomfort rises, and you choose to stay anyway. That's control, not over circumstances, over yourself. Mastering boredom. This is critical because most of training is boring. Same exercises, same routines, same movements over and over. And most people can't handle that. They need variety. They need entertainment. They need stimulation. But you've learned to find power in repetition, to embrace the boredom, to let it sharpen your focus instead of dull it, because boredom is just your mind seeking distraction. And when you refuse the distraction, you develop presence. Training the mind to stay present, to be fully engaged with the moment, with the rep, with the breath. Not thinking about yesterday, not planning tomorrow, just here, now, fully. That's warrior monk energy. Calm, focused, disciplined, unbothered, and it's built in silence, in solitude, in the space where you train alone. You stop explaining yourself, because explanations are for people who need approval. You're not seeking approval. You're seeking growth. So when someone questions your routine, you don't defend it. You just continue. When someone doubts your path, you don't justify it. You just walk it. When someone criticizes your choices, you don't argue. You just execute. You stop proving anything, not because you're arrogant, but because proving is external and you're focused internally. Unbecoming, unbuilding, unevolving. Results speak later. Much later, when the work you did in silence becomes visible, when the discipline you practiced alone shows up as strength, as skill, as presence, and people see it, and they wonder how, and they ask when it happened, but you don't explain, because they weren't there. They didn't see the mornings, the nights, the repetitions. They just see the outcome, and that's enough. Power grows quietly, in the dark, in the isolation, in the moments nobody witnesses. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't perform. It doesn't need validation. It just grows. Slowly, steadily, inevitably. And when it's ready, it appears. Not because you called for it, but because it became unavoidable. Nobody claps in the dark. That's why most quit. They need the applause, the recognition, the immediate reward. But the dark offers none of that. Just work. Just silence. Just you. And if you can't handle that, you can't build real strength. Because real strength is built where no one sees it, where no one celebrates it, where no one knows it exists until it's too late to ignore. The code you live by now is simple, clear, unbreakable. Train even when alone, especially when alone, because that's when it counts. Improve even when unnoticed, because improvement is internal. It doesn't require an audience. Prepare for moments no one sees. The early mornings, the late nights, the unglamorous repetitions, because those moments, stacked over time, create the results everyone will eventually see. Discipline becomes identity, not something you do, something you are. You don't think about whether to train, you just train. Because that's who you are now. You don't debate whether to show up, you just show up. Because that's your standard. You don't question whether to push through, you just push through. Because that's your code, and that code lived in silence makes you dangerous. Not to others, to mediocrity. You become someone who doesn't need external conditions to perform, who doesn't need perfect circumstances to excel. You become someone who operates at full capacity regardless, alone, in silence, without support. And that independence, that self-sufficiency, is what makes you unbreakable. Because you're not dependent on anyone. Not for motivation, not for accountability, not for belief. You've built all of that internally. Through training alone. Through choosing discipline when no one was watching. Through proving to yourself, rep by rep, day by day, that you're capable of more than you thought. And now, with certainty, with clarity, with unshakable confidence, that you don't need the crowd, you don't need the praise, you don't need anyone watching, you just need the work and the silence and yourself. That's enough. That's always been enough. So you train alone, not because you have to, but because you choose to. Because isolation is where you're strongest, where you're clearest, where you're most yourself. And in that space, in that silence, you build something no one can touch. Power, discipline, presence, strength. All earned, all real, all yours. Built in the dark, proven in time, unshakable forever. Come and train alone if you're building power in silence.